Episode 271, Ireland, Part 5. So, hello, welcome. Hope you're all doing okay. I didn't imagine I'd be doing this many episodes or parts about Ireland, so I don't know if I should start rethinking it all and maybe changing the name of the whole thing, but anyhow, please do listen to the other parts if you've got chance, because this whole episode is going to be about reviewing a few things from the other episodes. So I'd certainly recommend you listen to all of them, 1 to 4, and get a bit of a background. I came to Ireland in shall we say, as an engineer. Part of my role back in 1994 was the first time I came to Ireland. And the period between 94 and 99, August 99, I was based in the UK and England, and I was working here, travelling backwards and forwards. And then in August 1999 I came to live here permanently, and I've been here ever since, 21 years. So in my other podcasts, I mentioned a few companies that I came over to work on. I was installing these computer systems. I'm a geek, I admit it. When I was younger, and a geek, geeks weren't fashionable, I'm afraid. It wasn't a good thing. But I suppose they are now. I think it's a big deal now. Everybody wants, a nerd or a geek. I suppose it's quite trendy. It certainly wasn't anyway when I was younger. But so my whole background is around big computer systems, and it all started really for me in the 90s in this company, installing computer systems in food factories, primarily poultry factories, some pork factories, some beef factories, some salmon factories as well. And I did an awful lot of travel in that period between 93 and 99. I hadn't gone to the US that period because they had a US subsidiary, so there was no travel there, but I went pretty much everywhere else: Africa, Asia, Europe, Ireland, and the UK. So my first time I came to Ireland, I was working between two sites, two locations, if you like. One was in Coleraine, in what is Northern Ireland. I've got my big cursor here. Colerane's here. And also I was also crossing the border into the Republic of Ireland, into Monaghan here, Monaghan Poultry. So I was at Farm Fed Chickens was in Coleraine, and Monaghan Poultry, surprisingly enough, was in Monaghan. And I'd never left England, Scotland or Wales before. I'd done those countries. It was sort of the first time for me. Nowadays it sounds a bit silly. Babies are getting on planes with the parents, flying all over the world, I know COVID-19 and the pandemic's changed that a little bit, but it's quite common to travel. Back in my day it was still fairly common, but my family and whatever situation I was in, we didn't travel, But anyway, the first place I visited, where I had to go across the sea, I got a ferry from Stranraer in Scotland to Larne in Northern Ireland, and from there I drove to Coleraine. So the factory in Coleraine was a company called Farm Fed Chickens, and the company in Monaghan was called Monaghan Poultry. And in the last podcast, Ireland Part 4, it's not very catchy, is it? But I talk about Skelty Meats in Mitchelstown. I don't know what it was. I did the podcast, got it up, whatever, converted and edited, whatever I do, very little edited anyway. I thought I'd have a look at Mitchelstown and see what it was like now. Was the factory still there? Did it exist? I remember the hotel I stayed at. It took a while to find the hotel. I actually got the receipt from the last time I stayed there. I don't know how. It happened to be in a case in the attic. And a while ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I brought it down. Maybe I showed it to kids, I don't know. But I knew I had this receipt. And I looked at the receipt, and that sort of confirmed where it was. So I got looking at Mitchelstown, and I actually found it quite moving because the factory's gone. The hotel isn't a hotel anymore. And in some ways, it's sort of not a surprise, but I find it quite upsetting, if I'm honest. Not easily upset. I spent quite a bit of time there, and the hotel as well, and I do mention a story. I'm not going to recount the story now. When I was in Galty Meets in episode 4 about Ireland, so certainly if you get a chance, have a listen to it. But I don't know what it was. I mean, I know there's a motorway was built about 10 years ago, the M8, and that would have really decimated a lot of the sort of hotel type business. Certainly in Mitchelstown, its proximity to Cork and everything else. And with the factory going, I know a lot of people who were working in the factory who were coming in from the UK, where they would stay in that hotel. Yeah, and I know the hotel must have closed somewhere. I'm going to sound really. In the last 10 years, it closed anyway. And but I found it anyway online, and I did find it upsetting, and it's an interesting thing. Things move on, and these are businesses, and a business isn't viable, then it closes, That's it. That's how businesses work. But I found it upsetting. But it got me thinking anyway. It's sort of the catalyst for this podcast when I was thinking about, well, let me have a look at these other places. I know I've mentioned it, to the family and people I work with as well, to a certain extent, places I've visited over the years, and also to the kids, it'd be interesting to see what's happened to these places. I don't want to be too negative, but I think it shows what I'm going to do on this episode. I'm going to revisit these places anyway. I've got Google Maps and I've got a few websites to look at and see where are they now. And there's a part of me. I do find it upsetting, and it's wrong. It's the wrong emotion to be negative about these things, because I don't want to cast any, no illusions, right? These factories at the time were very manually intensive. They weren't great jobs in these factories. I had a great job. I'd fly in, do a bit of cabling, a bit of whatever, tappity tap on a keyboard, and I'd bugger off again. But for people who were in these factories, it wasn't a great job. It wasn't a great way to make a living, there has to be better. And that's the positive to come out of this, I think. I think in some ways I'm upset because it's like a part of in some ways, when I do talk about China and other stuff, that was how I started my career. And the career being such a big part of my life and the work that I do. It was like, this is how it started, and then for that to be gone, that's, there's a human emotion there, like, oh God, why did it have to, but it shouldn't be negative, and one of the reasons I'm doing this episode is because I want to get over that. I want to get over that negativity. Nobody died. Nobody was murdered. There's no atrocities. I've no right to feel negative about the times moving on. And the people I work with, the people in the factories, the people in the hotels, there's an opportunity there to get out of that what they was in. So, and I'm hopeful, having known a lot of them quite well from the time I spent in these places, I'm fairly 100% certain they would have gone on to greater things, but there was that sense of loss a little bit, and it's completely unfounded, and I shouldn't feel that. But anyway, so this for me is returning to some of these places today or the last few years, whatever, to see where they are now. Obviously, if you've not seen the previous podcasts, I think you really should. I'd sort of recommend, if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, at least go back to maybe Ireland Part 1 and work your way through. They're not too long. I try not to talk too much. But yeah, I'd recommend that, because it might give you a bit more context to what I'm talking about. I also know I'm using video now as well as audio, and up until podcast 260, whatever it was, I was audio only, so everything was what I was describing, and I made a lot of effort there. The problem I have now is, because I have the video in front of me and I'm a video that I'm recording, it probably makes sense to watch the video. I don't really like seeing myself on the video, if I'm honest. Who does? Who likes seeing themselves, unless you're extremely good looking and all the rest of it. but it's easy in some ways to describe things and show things, and the other thing I'd also say as well is I'm very familiar with Ireland, the UK. I'm actually familiar with the whole planet, if I'm honest. Maybe not Russia, maybe not the Arctic. So anyway, but the point is, when I look at things and talk about things, maybe if I talk about them, I talk about them very quickly and don't give enough detail. And maybe hopefully with a bit of imagery that might reinforce it a little bit. If you're watching this, listen to this, and you're from the US, I know I've got quite a big following in Asia and people in South America and Africa. I hope the video might help a little bit. There's pretty much no one on the planet hasn't heard of Ireland, and considering I was born and raised within 200 miles of Ireland, it was still a big deal when I first came here. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who've only really read about it or maybe seen it on TV and have never visited it. So sort of part of what I talk about, and sometimes talk too quickly and everything else. But hopefully it'll give you an insight into Ireland and the island of Ireland. It's a place I love. I'm still here, 21 years later. And at this point in my life, it's high taxes in Ireland, cars are expensive, house rentals are ridiculously expensive. It's not really, you're not being really sold on Ireland, but you know what, I'm still here, I haven't left. I pay my taxes, and I live near Dublin, and it's a place that I hold dear to my heart. So here I am, and here I'm talking about it, and I'm an Englishman, by the way, in case you didn't get the accents. For some reason, when I listen to myself on these podcasts, I sound like I'm from Liverpool. And I think most people on the planet probably heard of Liverpool, whether it was the Beatles or whether it was the football team. And I have to say, I'm not from Liverpool. I'm actually a Yorkshireman. I'm from Yorkshire, different accent completely. So I'm not quite sure what happened to the accent, that I'm starting to sound a little bit Scouse, a little bit Liverpoolian, a little bit like Paul Hollywood. I mean, he's got the fame and the money. I don't have any of that stuff, but I don't know why that's happened to me, and maybe it's a combination of things. Where I live now, my parents were from Widnes, which is sort of near Liverpool, not quite, and my whole family most of my family came through Liverpool from Ireland, so there's a connection there. Anyway, enough about me waffling on. I'm just going to have a little sip of water. Actually, I don't know, it's not very professional, is it? It's starting to be thirsty, It is water, by the way. Yeah, it's nothing stronger. That's for later. So I want to talk about a few of the places I visited when I first came to Ireland in a professional capacity, installing these computer systems in these factories. It doesn't really matter what the systems are. There are systems that they're rooted in what I work on now. I work for a big multinational. I'm on contract to IBM. You've probably heard of IBM. And I think the root of that, or the seed of that, was me working on these Unix systems in these factories. And basically, they were chicken factories, mostly. Maybe 80% of them that I worked in. Just happened to be the company that I work for. They put these systems in, chicken factories. So the first one I'm going to look at is in Monaghan. It wasn't the first one I went to. It was actually in Farmfed, but for some reason I looked at that one first. So Monaghan is here. I'll zoom in a little bit, hopefully you can see that. I've got to be careful because I'm looking at my screen here, which is, essentially that screen you can see there. But I don't see my big head, so I've got to be careful how I show it. So Monaghan's there. This distance here, I think it's about 12 miles or 15 kilometres from the border. It's very close to the border, and I was actually working in Coleraine, which is in the Northern Ireland. I'm not going to go into the history of Northern Ireland, really, I don't think. That could be for another podcast. But essentially that's part of the UK, whereas, Ireland's part of Ireland, it's the Republic of Ireland, so... but yeah, that could be for another podcast. So I was working here in Monaghan, and a company called Monaghan Poultry. That's where we'll start this off, I think. I'll zoom in a little bit more there now. I never stayed in the Hillgrove Hotel. It's mentioned here. It's the first hotel. I did stay in the Four Seasons. The Hillgrove Hotel pops out there. That was the most expensive hotel, and probably still is, around Monaghan. So that's Hillgrove Hotel. I did stay in the Four Seasons. It used to have I think it was the Four Seasons, just have a nightclub attached to it. I'm not sure it does now. It's called Club Mex. The locals used to call it Club Sex. Not sure what it was on about. I was a clean living lad, no idea. But essentially, this is Monaghan. There's the hospital, there's the museum. I can flick it into satellite mode, and like most of Ireland, as you can see, it's green, it's lovely, you know. All divided up into little fields, you know. The whole of Ireland, the whole of the UK is the same, you know. But if I zoom in a little bit more, there is a shopping centre there. I don't know if that was there. It probably was there when I was there. The Hillgrove Hotel was, the Four Seasons Hotel was, the hospital was there as well. Monaghan General Hospital was there. I'm just going to scroll across here to this point here, Gallinar. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. This is essentially where Monaghan Poultry was. They're not there anymore. So I had a quick shufties. I thought, where are they, you know? So this is it's called Solo Chick-IE. This is for companies. You used to call it Companies House in the UK, and it's called the CRO in Ireland. Any company that's in business has to register with the CRO, and they do their accounts, you know. So this is Monaghan Poultry, and it's quite interesting. I'm just looking down here. It was formed in 1968. Which is a very long time ago, so quite surprising. But the last accounts they filed was in the year 2000, and basically I think whatever happens after so many years, because the business is not running, it's considered dissolved. So in 2010 it's registered here as dissolved, which is fair enough, you know. But it was 1968. I don't know. They wound it up officially, I think, in 2010. As far as I know, you know what, it wasn't in business since 2000. It's actually quite an interesting story. And I know a bit about this because when I still worked for the company in the UK, I knew this was going on, that there was something happening with Monaghan Poultry, you know. It doesn't show it there, but it was 1968 was when it was formed. There you go, Thursday 23rd of May 1968. A long, well-established company. And basically, they slaughtered chickens. They you know, did whatever they do to them, put them in a box, sold them. You know, I think they used to cook them as well. I'm trying to remember now, but they used to have some big customers in Ireland. From what I understand, it was mostly Irish customers, like Dunnes Stores and people like that. But the product was called, product line was called Gold Feather, and I remember seeing, it was the cooked sliced chicken. So there was a quite large, shall we say, range of chicken products. I do apologise if you're vegetarian or vegan, by the way. I don't mean to, you know, offend you in that sense, but it's just, you know, I mean, to be honest, I don't really have an opinion on it, on being vegan or vegetarian or anything like that. But you know, I was in my early 20s installing computer systems, and it just happened to be chicken factories, you know. So, and this is what was done. But so essentially, what happened? I was there in the 90s. I think the last time I went there would have been 98 or 99. But they were in trouble in 2000. And basically, what happened? Which was an interesting thing. But this is from August 2001. Department of Agriculture, the license was withdrawn for them to produce chicken products. The Department of Agriculture suspended its license, and basically the plant was in breach of EU hygiene regulations. Now, it's sort of interesting because my experience of the factory was it was an old factory. It was probably built in 1968, and the hygiene wasn't the best. Now, bear in mind I had experience of maybe over 100 chicken factories across the UK and Europe and Asia, Africa, whatever. I didn't feel it was a very high standard of hygiene. And you know, to be honest, it wasn't like me going, oh my god, this place is terrible. But there was an issue with something to do with the slaughtering of the chickens, and it was messy anyway. There was a blockage and they had to close down for a while. When I was there, which would have been 97 or 98. This is a couple of years before this, you know. And someone's whistling outside and it's really starting to annoy me. But I'm sort of that age where I'm becoming a grumpy old man. But yeah, so the hygiene standard wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst either. I've definitely seen worse factories. But basically, as the article says, they wanted a license. 300 people, it's a lot of people. You know, I worked with these people over years. I think, like I said, when I first went there in 1994. I last went, I think it was 99 or 98. And I knew a lot of people in the factory, both, in the factory itself, in the office, But basically they lost the license. They got the license back after making a few changes, and they lost it again. And that was it. That was the end. That was the end of Monaghan Poultry. So 100 farmers and growers no longer supplied them, and 300 people employed were made redundant, So it's sort of a sad end in some ways. I'd spent many years on and off in that factory installing computer systems and things like that. Obviously I had no control over the hygiene or anything else like that, but it was sort of a sad end in some ways. Now, to be fair to Monaghan, there are other businesses there. Monaghan Mushrooms, for example. They're a very large company. And they supply mushrooms, I think, all over the world. My focus is going funny on the camera. I do apologise if I'm getting blurred occasionally. But they're a massive supplier of mushrooms all over the world. So there were businesses there, So basically closed down in 2001. So that's whatever that is. No, that's long after I was there, to be fair. The guts of 20 years ago. But there is I think there's a company on the site. I found this. This is the address. I think this is the site. It's roughly where I remember it. I couldn't remember some of the roads, but it looks about right. Just outside Monaghan. So I'm thinking this is on the site. It's been repurposed, and there's an American. These are a Californian company, I think, which I was sort of quite pleased about. Just because it's nice to see, US or any country's companies, invest in. Entekra, I think they're called. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, but it looks like that's sort of the location where it was. I'm just looking around. There's no other big site, so it looks like maybe the site was demolished and this was built on the site. It would have had the power supply, the services. It would have been ideal, And this company, they make wooden buildings. I think they're one of the leaders in the world. I don't know if you're watching this from America. I know you love wooden buildings over there. I think most buildings are wooden, aren't they? In Europe, certainly in Germany, maybe Scandinavia, you get wooden type. But Switzerland, you might get wooden buildings. In Ireland, the UK, they primarily were stone buildings. They were brick, concrete, whatever. But woods, it's definitely making a comeback, as it were. And so that was I think there's a bit of positivity out of that. What happened all those years ago, that there is some investment going into Monaghan, and that it's still, a place to be, really. I'm just going to scroll back into town. There's a bar and restaurant here, the Squealing Pig. I did go there once, I think, for a drink. But the hotel I stayed at the most is, for some reason, is it not coming up? It was there a minute ago. Zoom in a bit more. Oh, there you go. The West Anra. I probably pronounce it wrong, but it's the West Anra. It's a lovely hotel. Apparently they're not open at the moment. Looks like they're only booking for the 17th of August. That's COVID, of course. Lovely looking hotel. I think it was a bank at some point. I think the current owners, I could be wrong about this. I know there was owners who were from the north, and they owned it. But I stayed there many, many times. And it was, like I say, the reason it's probably so important to me is it was one of the first places I went outside of the mainland of England, Wales and Scotland. This is abroad, for me, so 3-star hotel, interesting. But I stayed there, and even the rooms at the front here, there's a couple of rooms I remember staying in, and it's like a bit of a square in front here, and they used to be directly opposite. Ulster Bank is still there, of course. Ulster Bank straight opposite. Just some of the memories I have of that. I wasn't a seasoned traveller. I was just a young fella, who'd never really travelled in his whole life, never been abroad, and this was something different, so that's Monaghan and Monaghan Poultry, and like I say, it's something I've spoken about quite a lot in the podcast, going back to the audio only ones as well. I do mention it, so hopefully it gives you a bit of context, a bit of background why it was so important to me. Moving on a little bit now to Coleraine. Colerane's is in Northern Ireland, part of the UK, and the company was Farm Fed Chickens. And the first article I came to was from 1996, and this is sort of the time I would have been working there, So like there you go, it's investing £3.8 million sterling to expand its business in Britain, develop new value-added products, you know, so it's fantastic. And there's even a mention down here, Farmcrest in Craigavon. I've been saying Farmcrest was in Lurgan for some reason for a while. It's in Craigavon, of course, but 440 people work for them. Isn't that incredible? Robin Henry. I don't think I spoke to him personally, but I know the name, you know. So this is going back 24 years, the article, which is interesting. So there was meant to be expansion there, you know. But hey, things didn't go very well. So in whatever years this, 2006, the axe falls on 380 food plant jobs. I think I can zoom this in a bit. I can do a bit of jiggery pokery. Let's make this a bit bigger. So almost 400 workers are set to lose their jobs at the plant's closure. Management brought the news to workers in the farm-fed chicken factory. The United staff, 90 from Poland. You know what? They said it wasn't economically viable. You know, the factory takes chickens from about 60 poultry farms around the county, surrounding the county, Londonderry town. That's interesting. Why did they mention Londonderry there? I wonder. Anyway, yeah, it's fairly close, I suppose, isn't it? And last year, 41 workers were laid off. So, yeah, it's sad, you know, and it did happen and it closed. That's essentially 400 people that went, you know, very sad news. And I did wonder then what's happened to it since, and what you know, what the situation is now. And boom, 2000. Oh, hello, what's my opinion? That'll be my opinion. 2017. Wow, this is really recent, isn't it? So new Coleraine jobs promised at FarmFed site. So Linus Food Service agreed to buy the former FarmFed site outside Coleraine to develop its multi-million-pound business. So it looks like maybe there's a phoenix rising from the ashes, you know, and hopefully now that's continued to talks about the food service. And I'm not familiar with the that company, but you know what, you know, it's something, isn't it? It's, yeah. So going back to Google Maps anyway, so that was that's Monaghan there. You know, I did something there. And Coleraine is up here. That's where FarmFed was. Craigavon has to be near Lurgan. There you go. It's just down from Lurgan. So there's Craigavon. That's where the Farmcrest was. I think I do mention I was there a weekend during the summer, and they hadn't hosed the place down. It smelled terrible. And that's one memory I have. I used to wear like a boiler suit. Not always, but if I was doing stuff in the factory, I would. And I remember climbing up. I had to climb onto the production line. I got caught. I got this big rectangular cut in me overalls. I still wore them for years after. That's Craigavon anyway now, not so far from Lurgan. So the other place I mentioned, certainly in the last episode, was Galty Meat in Mitchelstown, which, you know, we've got to go a long way south. So, you know, we're going from up here in Monaghan, whatever, here in Coleraine, then go all the way south past Dublin, all the way down here, on the way to Cork nearly, you know, nearly at Cork really. You've got Mitchelstown, there it is. So this is, I did a bit of a recce and had a look at it, and I did find it quite upsetting, but I think one thing you need to appreciate maybe on Mitchelstown is this thing coming down here. And I'll try and do a line with it. This is a motorway, freeway, highway, whatever you want to call it, called the M8. I think it was opened in 2010, about 10 years ago, I know. But essentially this is completely bypassed Mitchelstown. This is the main route between Dublin and Cork. Cork is the second largest city in Ireland, you know. So, you know, this is obviously going to affect business, I think. Certainly a lot of maybe people who would have stayed there locally, you know, if they're travelling and all the rest of it. At the time when it opened, they said it was going to take just over 2 hours to drive from Dublin to Cork. Bear in mind, 30, 40 years ago, it would have took you maybe 4 hours, maybe 5 hours. When the motorway opened, Ryanair had a plane from Cork to Dublin, which took 50 minutes. Now they said if you get at the airport an hour earlier, as you're meant to, or even more, well, you might as well drive now. And yeah, so the motorway changed a lot of things. So that was one of the reasons, and there's other reasons as well, and I'll talk about those there now as well. So this is Mitchelstown. I'm going to scroll in a little bit there now. it took me a long time to get me bearings when I first looked at this the other night. I know sometimes it's difficult looking from above anyway, but this road down the middle, you can see down the middle of Mitchelstown, that was the main road. If you was driving from Dublin to Cork before the M8, this is the road you would go down. So that sort of helped a little bit get me bearings, And there are companies here, there's still businesses here that are okay. There's Gary Gold and Kerry Gold, and there is stuff still going on. It's not completely dead. Aldi and Lidl are there now. There's an Aldi there up here and there's a Lidl down here. They're everywhere. It's interesting that when they arrived in Ireland many years ago, they said we're going to have 400 stores across the island of Ireland, and I think they're going to be pretty close. They really know how to have a low price, cut price store, I suppose. And I think they're actually fundamental to Ireland, and people sort of do depend on them, and I know they've done the same in the US. I think Aldi was the first one to go to the US, followed by Lidl. I don't know too much the history of Aldi and Lidl. They're a German company. The brothers, there was a connection there, originally, and they split up, and Aldi split again, but it's still Aldi, but anyway, they obviously come up with a product that people love, and it's, inexpensive, it works for them. I won't talk too much about it. I could talk all night about Aldi and Lidl. But anyway, so this is Mitchelstown, and I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here. And I was trying to get me bearings the other day because I stayed in I remember staying in this hotel, which is off the main road. I stayed there a lot. And I also remember once walking to work. That's how close it was to the factory, I remember walking down a road, turn a corner, carry my toolbox, walk past the petrol station, turn, and I'm into the factory, So I tried to get my bearings, and I realised that the hotel I'd stayed at, when I actually found the receipt now, it was Baldwin Street. So we can see Baldwin Street down here, and you probably just see it there coming into view, Baldwin Street, it says there. So the hotel was on this street, and I remember walking down this street and turning left, I'll pull out a little bit. I remember walking up it past there was no Aldi there, walking past the petrol station, just down here the petrol station, walking a bit longer and then turning into the factory. And well, there it is. It's gone. It's gone completely. It's flattened. It's just a big piece of concrete, and now it's completely gone. So it was quite quite a moment when I realised it was no longer there, and it was a big factory. Again, though, it was built decades ago. It'd been expanded upon and everything else, but it's gone. There's no Celtic meats in Mitchelstown, not that factory anyway. And then I thought, well, I'll go along Baldwin Street. Could I find? So you probably see here there's mention of Castle Park, mention of a castle, which I never did visit, but I remember the hotel was called Castle Park Hotel, and it was here. Just where the cursor is there now, that's where it was. I'm gonna. There's more to see with where the hotel was, so I'm gonna pull the little man out. Hopefully I can find this place now. And there you go. That was the main entrance. So this is the main entrance to the hotel, and this was a bar area. I don't think that was the entrance that was used all the time, but I think there was a bar area here, and you could walk down a little corridor past this door here, and there would be like a reception area, and then you had a staircase going up, which would be these rooms here. So I think this entrance, I used more than that one, thinking back. But anyway, as you can probably see from this picture, this part of the building is a funeral home now. I think it's called Church of Rest, but it's a funeral home and there's no set down. But the nice thing about Street View is we can go back a little bit. So I can go back to 2019, so it's gone back 11 years. And there it is, in 2009, it's gone back 11 years. Castle Park Hotel with this sort of a lovely frontage. I mean, having seen the funeral home, I'm sort of going, yeah, that looks like that's perfect for a funeral home, isn't it? The windows and the ornate front is perfect, isn't it? But this is back in 2009. Now it's roughly, it is how I remember it, to be honest. And this part of the building looks quite nice, and it did then. It's nice, you know. So obviously you can see here that it's Oggenbau's, that's what it was called. Interesting, I don't remember that. But I don't remember going to this entrance very often anyway, that's what I think it could have been closed a lot, that entrance. I remember going into this entrance anyway and parking my car out here, outside the place. And this grey section, I believe, was all the hotel. So from this point all the way to the end of the grey section, I think was all hotel. Downstairs here was like, what do you call it, somewhere you could have a band and you could sit down and have a drink. There was a bar there, you know. And then, I'm trying to think now where the restaurant was. But I remember it upstairs, and I stayed in some of these rooms. I stayed in some, and I don't know if they're all on the fronts, but I remember staying on the front anyway. There could be one or two on the back as well. So this is Castle Park Hotel. I have the receipt here. I have a picture of it somewhere. And if I'm really clever, I might superimpose this. But let's have a look at this receipt from the Kingston restaurant. Anyway, I think it was upstairs. It might have been on the first floor of the restaurant. I'm really struggling to remember. And that must have been, obviously, there's no first floor here. But I've had to have been here, maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to remember. It's a long time ago. So 10th of September 1998. Room 14, I remember, was a rubbish room. Like one single little bed. Well, I stayed there anyway. I had a prawn cocktail, chicken Kiev and chips, and a pint of Heineken. So that the prawn cocktail, the chicken Kiev and chips, and the pint of Heineken came to £12.75. About €15, $10. It was quite a while ago. And I've even got a little receipt here as well. The room itself, it says apartment. That's quite a way of putting it. The apartment was £26. Which would be about €32, maybe $40, $40, you know. My total was £50 anyway, which included some drinks. I included that dinner and the room. So I think that was probably, I'm not sure that was the last time I stayed there. I sort of remember it a little bit. I don't know what I was doing there when I was there. I was only there one night, and I've still got the receipts, 22 years ago. So that's the Castle Park Hotel. It was for sale, this is June 2009, it was for sale 11 years ago, and it was pictured again by Google in 2011, 2 years later, you know, still for sale, you know, still not got anywhere. Now, I don't know if something's happened here. I can see there's a plaque on the wall, which I really want to have a read of, see if I can get a picture of that by zooming in, but obviously, you know, I mean, the motorway opened in 2010. I don't know when the factory closed. If I just click over here, 2007, the plant had closed in Mitchelstown. So you know, with that flattened area that I showed you. So there was Brio Foods. They sound English, don't they? Brio Foods, Riox Holdings. Oh God. Well, you know, they did some sort of in-depth review of manufacturing facilities. You know what? Of course this place can do this cheaper. I mean, I remember in the factory there was a boning hall, and it was maybe 50 or 60 butchers using their hands and knives, highly skilled. That's too expensive, you know. Anyway, the article goes into some detail about it, but essentially they were closing it, you know. Interesting to note that slaughtering had ended in 2004 because they maintained this sector of the business had become uncompetitive. Well, you know what? This company, this holding company, this foreign company that owned them, I'm sorry, of course it's uncompetitive, of course it's not going to be. I mean, we all know countries that are competitive, don't we? And yeah, so they closed it anyway. Yeah, and that's the site. So and now, yeah, so the hotel, part of it was turned into a funeral home. You know, I found that quite depressing actually. Not sure why. I mean, it looks like it lends itself. I'd love to know what this plaque says, and I don't think I'm going to get a good image. I'm going to suggest something in a few moments, but let's just see if we can get an image of this. No, I can't get it. So, when it was the hotel, I remember there's a little reception thing, and as you go in the little door, not the big door, that was the bar area and stuff. I think it could have been the restaurant. It could have been with the restaurant, I can't remember. I remember I was sitting at the bar in this part of the restaurant, bar, restaurant, hotel, whatever. And I remember sitting there, and I wasn't very well. I think I had a flu or something, a head cold. I'm sitting there, and I'd never drunk much in those days anyway. I was drinking even less. And I was there, and there was a girl, she's called Jennifer. She's not watching this, but Jennifer, if you're watching, you remember you used to, I think her mother, she either owned it or she had the lease on the hotel, and she used to work in it, she's a little bit younger than me, not a lot different, younger than me. Lovely girl, very, very interesting, and all the rest of it. But I remember sitting at the bar, and I think it was her, she got a big thing of glasses from the dishwasher, all for the dishwasher. And she just turned and did something, and they all fell on the floor. Must have been like 30 or 40 glasses just smashed, So that's one of the things I remember. And I remember there was and I wasn't interested in football on the TV, but and it wasn't a bar I normally, I don't remember being in that bar very often. I would have been down the other end where it was a quieter sort of bar, But yeah, interested anyway. So I don't know what this plaque says, but I remember behind the reception there was a plaque, and it was about how, I think it was Albert Reynolds, one of the Taoiseachs anyway, if you don't know what Taoiseach means, it's like Prime Minister, shall we say, of Ireland, had opened this great fanfare, maybe a couple of years before I was there, maybe in the early 90s, I could probably Google who was Taoiseach then, couldn't I? I'm not going to. But, and there was a bit of fanfare over it, but it was a different time. There was a big factory there in Galaxy Meath, there was no M8, there was no motorway. So I'm feeling a bit better about it now. I feel a little bit like I'm getting a lot of this out of my system from having looked at it the other night. I'm feeling a little bit down over the whole affair, and for all sorts of silly reasons, and I've said it before, the first place I really fit outside. This was a big journey for me. This is like, I had to either sail for hours, it could take me a day and a half to get here, I don't know. Or, I did fly here a couple of times. I flew through Cork Airport a couple of times as well. But, it was a big journey. It wasn't just jumping in the car in a couple of hours and you're there, which I was sort of used to with a lot of the places I went to in Norfolk. So I went abroad. I was in a different place, and not the worst place to be in the world, So now it's that plaque's gone. They've removed the plaque. Okay. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. The plaque we see here, you can just see it there. I'd say that's relating to the hotel and when it was opened by Taoiseach, whoever it happened to be, I can almost read it as well. And it's not good going there now, is it? Because the plaque's not there anymore, so I can't even do that. They've took that away, but obviously these have probably been I think they've been turned into apartments. It's hardly a funeral home, the whole lot of it. And if you then go to 2019, yeah, the plaque's gone. And that's sort of sad now. That does upset me a little bit now. But yeah, I stayed in one of these rooms up here. I think it was probably around here somewhere. 24, 25, 26 years ago. But it's all changed now.